I think at the moment it's a real interesting perfect storm for businesses, in particular for procurement, which in turn can create a lot of opportunity for procurement to make a difference. But we're seeing at the moment double-digit inflation. So rather than procurement teams traditionally focused on cost savings, we're very much now looking at cost mitigation, trying to control the costs that are spiralling out of control in many different categories. Equally, we're seeing governments raise interest rates to try and cope with that inflation, which in turn is now increasing the cost of money for businesses. So that's resulting in tightened budgets. So if procurement teams are looking for investment in technology or in supply chain, CapEx investments, they really now need a very, very robust business case for soliciting that money from finance, and with payback much quicker than might normally have been considered. But also we're seeing still a lot of supplier disruption, still in the post-COVID era, of trying to get hold of supply of certain goods and services. That could be also due to political situations, sanctions in Russia. Who knows what's going on maybe in the wider Asian region as well, with different political ties happening. So this can really create some big challenges for procurement as to where they need to source their various goods and services around the world.
All the purchasing department, I think a lot of companies are facing the same issue, but clearly the economical context, we are facing a really, really strong inflation right now. A lack of raw material that are crucial for our operation.
Second thing, a little bit more long term, but equally important, is the importance of ESG. So ESG cannot be overstated in terms of how critical it is for procurement teams to get this right, because this will become a board issue. Cost savings arguably are not a board issue, profit is. ESG definitely will be. Supply chains have a massive impact on that, and therefore the role that procurement teams play in terms of making sure that you've got a compliant and a compliant supply chain and a supply chain that's contributing to your ESG success and performance is really important.
I think we're still seeing a big talent shortage, not just in procurement, right across the board. There are a lot of available jobs out there, but procurement do then need to compete with many other industries, many other professions, to try and attract the best talent to drive the profession forwards.
I do think that the bigger challenges are ones like talent, both retaining your current talent and finding talent in procurement and strategic sourcing based on where we need to take the organizations and the function and the industry. And that talent looks different than it looked 10 years or 20 years ago.
And then finally, of course, technology. So there is just a sea of opportunity there, a really good sea of opportunity. But there is the challenge to get that right. And what do you do with that? And I think that there's kind of a balance that underlies all of these things, which is about focus and balance. What do we do in-house? Because clearly any procurement team is going to have finite resources. What do you do in-house? What do you outsource? Do we go end-to-end with technology, or do we go best of breed? So getting that balance right and making sure you've got the return on investment across those 4 areas is really important.
I think for me, regarding the strategy, first, the key thing is that you have to be aligned with the business. When I was working in consulting companies, and I met a lot of purchasing director or financial director was struggling, and they didn't know how to reach their internal customer, how to ensure their savings. So the first thing for me is to be aligned with the business and to understand what is the place that the business is giving to purchasing. Because if you don't have a strong sponsoring, and if you are not aligned with your direction, you can do whatever project, the best negotiation ever. But if it's not aligned with the business and you don't have a sponsor, you will not be able to go anywhere.
I also think you've got to constantly engage the business. It's no good procurement once a year engaging the business, getting their objectives, going away in their ivory tower for a year and working on those initiatives in isolation. You've got to set up your own internal review panel, your own committee, again, ideally for C-suite, but if not heads of department, to regularly, by which I mean maybe quarterly, get together and just reevaluate what is important to each of those departments at this particular point. And this all leads to a more of an agile approach to a procurement strategy.
Well, how we incorporate ESG in purchasing strategy, and now it becomes more and more important, and it's key for us, especially now that we have an impact positive position in our steering committee. And we have clear objective on the ADO group regarding ESG. So on our side, every department of the organization need to have clear objective in how they will contribute to the objective of the group and then in Spain locally. So on our side, each project that we launch, but it can be services or products, we always look at how can we do business in a better way.
I can think of a few examples of companies I know where there was where the ESG strategy started with procurement. And as procurement was able to show really the TCO value of an ESG strategy, that that energy and that value statement from ESG flowed upwards to the board level. And then from there, it didn't just come back down to procurement, but it spread horizontally out to other areas of the company that not at all procurement related, where ESG became, for example, part of maybe a marketing approach, became part of a public, corporate philanthropic activities. But that the original impetus started with procurement, embracing ESG as a procurement strategy, and then the value from that, which could be again, if done right, absolutely can be quantified and communicated throughout the organization, but most importantly, up to the C-suite, up to the board, who then saw that value and embraced it and frankly magnified it and expanded it to be broader than just procurement.
The change management is not an easy work in the purchasing department. I would say that I think that half of my time is dedicated to communication, influencing, and constant change management, especially in an organization where we just create the department. It was like we opened it like 3-4 years ago, because before one director started the department. In the change management, it's key, but it's really key to have a really good sponsoring from your direction, have a really clear guiding principle. Then you have to communicate on the C-level to all the direction from the company. And in my case, what I did is do a meeting with all the directors from all the departments to let them know what is the framework now and how we want to work together. Because I noticed in this company, in previous company, when I was doing consulting, is that all the purchasing director was struggling on the question of how can I make them follow my policy, governance, because people are seeing purchasing department as a support department, but not as an added value department for the business. They see it as a really administrative, that we don't have value, and then it's a lose of time to go through the purchasing department. And sometimes they feel that they are losing power sometimes. So it's all about communication and let's understand to the people how we will work together to make them part of the project. Because if they are not part of the project, for sure, you will not be able to implement the project and the savings that you presented to the direction. So it's really key.
I have seen, both in my experience as a chief procurement officer and also now as a consultant, that so many companies overlook, or they sort of look past it. They think, oh, this is no problem. I got my strategy. Great, we're on the way. And change management to me may be one of the single most critical factors for success of a procurement strategy. And likewise, it can be probably the single biggest, in my experience, risk for failure of your procurement strategy. And so if I think about what does that process entail, it actually, for me, starts way before you say, here's my strategy. It starts at the, as they say, it starts at the beginning. And the beginning is, before I create my strategy, I have to have identified who are my key business stakeholders. And I have to have begun, I may not yet have developed, full trusted partnership relationships with those stakeholders, but I have to I have to have identified my key internal stakeholders and begun to build the bridges of partnership, begun to establish the relationships with them.
So it's really key for each project to have a business owner, to clarify the methodology on how you will work with them, and for them to make sure that you will respect the job, and they are here to add a lot of value, because finally they are the experts on the domain that they manage. So it's key to work together to ensure that you are proposing a solution that fits with the needs, to make them part of the project, and share all the success of the project, because finally you cannot work alone, not anymore. And it's not only about negotiating one price and to be a cost killer, not anymore. It's not like this. I think the purchasing department changed a lot this last year. It's still not so professional and not so recognized in some company. But the key is to work together, to have a clear guideline, to have a really strong sponsoring, and to always communicate internally, and to communicate all the success stories that you have. Because when I start, I was thinking, okay, how can I can work on this transformation? And it burst of the purchasing department in an organization when they spend a lot of years, 15 years, 20 years doing things on their own way, and not speaking with the other to know what they need. Because we were losing a lot of money just because people were not communicating together and they were not aware of what each shop were doing. So just to get all the information, to get people work together, and to have a clear visibility on a national level of what you have, you can gain a lot of money. And it's really key to make them feel that this is their project too. It's not purchasing project. I always say that we are speaking about company project. It's not mine. It's not. And if we have a really a big success, it's not only thanks to the purchasing department. Because if I don't work with the people who know all the technical specification, how can we innovate, how can we optimize the process, I will not be able to deliver a good project. So I think this is key, and we have to spend a lot of communication, a lot of time in communication and influencing people, but always working together. I think this is key for the success of any project.
I think just continually reappraising your strategy is important as well for the change management. Situations do change, markets change, so you want to continually make sure that your procurement strategy is still relevant and it is still the right outcome that you're trying to achieve. So you do have to be receptive to changes that are happening. So the pushback can be legitimate, but equally, constantly just reminding people why you're there, and that can bring people on side, and you're all fighting that same fight.
The most common mistakes that I see procurement make is, number one, they try to do things in isolation. They try to operate in isolation, everything from creating their strategy to performing their roles. And they skip the steps of building partnership, creating cross-functional teams, and probably most importantly, they skip change management.
I think the second thing is, back to Sun Tzu here again. He said, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And so I think, one real weakness in some strategies is that the leadership or whoever get in a room and they think these things through and they do the big picture, and then they don't think about the tactical stuff and what really is going to make a difference.
For me, opportunity in driving forward a procurement strategy, it comes down to the process, the people, and the technology. So let's focus on the people. You need the right people in your team that are best aligned to doing the right job, whether that's managing relationships with suppliers, whether that's running sourcing activities, whether that is the data. There's a big influx of good data coming to procurement now, thanks to technology. So you need the right people that can understand that data and turning it into meaningful insight. The process, it's all about making sure that procurement is there best to support the business. So you've got to come up with processes that will allow that. So if the business has objectives around sustainability, making sure you have a process for how sustainability is embedded in what you're delivering as procurement. If your business objectives are around mitigating cost increases or trying to deliver cost savings, then making sure your process is around that. On the technology side of things, there's some fantastic bits of kit out there, so it's looking at where technology can best help with your procurement strategy. Again, if it comes down to automation, if it comes down to your sourcing and supplier management, if it's in understanding the sort of sustainability agenda, using third-party risk assessment tools and things like that. So technology has a huge role to play. And all of this drives good data. And with that good data, your procurement strategy can be measured, that it is actually delivering, but equally you can continually refine and improve your strategy as time goes on.
Procurement has the ability to gather data, either directly or indirectly, from suppliers as a part of the sourcing process and as a part of your category management process, that then can give you data for things like market trends, can really become a baseline for benchmarking. And that in turn, again, surrounded by the right tools that let you access data from your suppliers, let you receive data from your suppliers, and do so in a pretty seamless and not labor-intensive fashion, then lets you be agile.
Equally, I think engaging suppliers is really key. A lot of intellectual knowledge is locked up inside suppliers, just ready for businesses to unlock by just engaging with suppliers better. Meeting with your key strategic suppliers, quarterly, and sharing what your challenges are, and just putting that forward to the supplier to say, well, where can you fit within these challenges I'm facing? I think many suppliers are very prepared to have that conversation.
In really simple terms, I think technology has the ability to completely change the role of procurement and transform the way we do things and how we think about them. So maybe in the past we would have thought about a typical procurement organisation having category managers and buyers, and people would be working away on their strategies, and then we progressed a bit and we got the internet, and people would go away and do their internet research and go and sort of pull stuff out. Now we are in a world where we are data rich, with almost too much data. We now have solutions that are bringing that data to us in more of a structured form. So it's really about how do you use technology to shift the focus and really transform, whether it's a category manager's job or even change the roles within procurement. Again, a recent discussion with people. If you'd said to people 10 years ago, you'll have data scientists in a procurement team, they would have, looked at you rather quizzically and said, come on, this is not University Challenge, this is just procurement, isn't it, surely? So I think those things are really important. So there's part of it which is an efficiency play. There's part of it which is a data play, and then there's part of it which is quite unsettling for people who are sat in procurement, which is there's technology that can just replace your role. So autonomous negotiation and those sorts of things can come into play, and maybe they replace or maybe they enhance, and ultimately that's the role that technology has to play, which is you can do more with the same or less human resource. So, more for less in simple terms.
Where I think the real role of technology and the real benefit of technology for procurement is in terms of how does procurement bring greater value, continuing to expand the value proposition that procurement brings to an organization, to the company, to the stakeholders. It's about that total cost of ownership, which is much more than can I reduce purchase price on an individual item, on an individual order. It's really about total value. And that value also includes things like, how do I manage risk for the organization? And technology, I think, in my experience, and it may be a phrase that I've heard from somebody, so I apologize if I'm quoting something here. Technology done right, for me, means that you are bringing increasingly added value to an organization while managing the risk, and all the while staying nimble and agile enough to meet changing corporate goals and changing industry and external being able to respond agilely to external factors in your marketplace and in your supply chain.
There are absolutely some tools that help support your strategy and implementing that strategy, and doing so in a way that just brings professionalism to everything you're doing, that therefore makes you look very capable. I think many departments would be a bit concerned if procurement didn't have any tools or technology to support what they were doing, because let's face it, in all other departments they massively rely on technology. If you're finance, you have some fantastic accounting systems. If you're sales, you have some brilliant CRM systems. So I think tools and technology is absolutely essential for procurement to come across as professional, and also to free up time for procurement to focus less on the administrative, pushing paper around type delivery, and more onto the strategic, more onto the relationship management, and having a close alignment with your different stakeholders on what they need from you.
On my side, as I have a strategical team and I'm not managing the operational process, as it's completely decentralized. We have two main KPI. I would say it's the coverage that we have. Are we able to cover a huge percentage of all the categories per year? And then for sure the savings that we get at the end of the year. So I would say these are the two main KPI, but in order to have a better operation, in order to ensure compliance, and in order to ensure that we will get these savings, because we always present like theoretical savings when we finish a project, but the key thing is that how we can ensure that these savings are becoming a reality in the accounts.
Three things, I think. First, customer satisfaction. So if you've done that upfront analysis of what do people think of my procurement team, where are we now compared with where we were before, you can have the best numbers in the world, but if people aren't happier, all you've got are better numbers, and that's not going to be a sustainable solution. That said, second thing, numbers. You've got to be able to measure your impact and say it's not just how people feel, but it's what have we delivered as an organisation. And when I think about that, yeah, cost savings are part of it. There's always the debate about we need to move beyond savings, but I don't think you very, very rarely find an organisation will say we're not bothered at all about savings, and that's usually where procurement has so much impact on top line and on sales and on growth that's the primary focus. But again, it's a number. But also these non-financial things, so ESG, contribution to local communities, environmental improvement, some of those things that you can measure with numbers, those are important.
Innovation is key. As I said, in the future we will miss some raw materials. We already have a lot of study, quite scaring study, that I would say. So we have to find a way of replacing this kind of product to procure our planet, because the raw materials, they are counted. It's not illimited. So we have to find a way of using our resources in a better way, and check how we can recycle this and to not affect our environment. So I think a lot of innovation regarding sustainable products.
So I think automation is going to have a huge role to play in procurement strategy moving forward. Once you've identified all the different processes within your strategy and the people to drive those forward, you're then going to look at the tech as to how you can automate as much of that as possible and make it as light touch as possible from the procurement function point of view.
So I think it's a fascinating time and an exciting time. What is going to be critical, it's back to the customer satisfaction and the user interface. People will use technology that is intuitive, that's easy to get into, and that when they switch on their machine or they flick on the app, they go, right, this is going to be straightforward, and there isn't a sense of dread. Whether suites can achieve that, that's a big challenge because you've got big complex systems. They have the advantage of being able to knit things together. However, I do think ultimately what's going to win are those solutions that go, we know what you want to get out of this, and we're going to give you the quickest and easiest way to it, and it's going to give you the best outcomes. So, in a world where procurement teams might be focused on one or two elements, best of breed undoubtedly is going to be in a position of strength.
If we've learned anything in the last 3 years, it's we have to be open to change, and not just reactively, but proactively. And part of that, I think, requires that companies I guess I'd use the expression double down on embracing the technological journey, the transformational journey, and meaning continuing to look at what are the best solutions in the marketplace. How do those solutions and which of those solutions can be used to further where each department is on their journey, and how to support the company's goals on that journey. And that means not just what are the right solutions, what's the right technology to do a function, but to also support things like your ESG activities, to support risk management, regulatory compliance, to be both a long range view as well as a safety net for things like supply chain disruption, geopolitical disruption. Technology can be really, it needs to be a wrapper around all of that. And so I think that technology really sits at the core of your strategy as the future strategy, and how do you stay relevant to that future strategy.
So procurement strategy, we've seen more so now that it needs to remain agile. It has to change to the change in market conditions, the change in the business operating conditions. Things like new sanctions with Russia, things like COVID, things like supplier disruption. These have all created a business case for why procurement processes need to be agile to cater for these changes in conditions. And so this also has a knock-on effect onto technology. No longer is it suitable to have this one-size-fits-all technology approach, because quite honestly, by the time you've selected your technology solution and you've spent those years implementing it, the market itself may fundamentally have shifted. Your procurement strategy, what you're there to deliver for the business, may have massively changed, and that technology solution you've just finally implemented no longer fits the need. And so this is where best of breed, agile technology itself can come in to just rapidly respond and react to what matters most to procurement at that point in time. And then maybe 6 months, a year down the line, procurement's priorities have changed somewhat. Maybe it's shifted from delivering cost to actually delivering, mitigating risk. In which case you want technology that you can adjust and almost plug and play to fit those specific requirements. So I think it's important, therefore, to have technology that is agile along with your procurement strategy.